Again, we've been back in the flow of community activity for a bit of time now that the end of the winter retreat is behind us. And good time to maybe reflect on, it is so easy in community interactions, in fact it's almost kind of defined or established this way for underlying tendencies, afflictive emotions to start coming up in the context of being in community. That's part of the pressure cooker mode of operation here in the monastery. We kind of put ourselves in a fairly tight container, and we have precepts, and so emotions arise, and we have a container that allows us to see these emotions much more clearly, and sometimes much more painfully, because we don't have the usual modes of distraction to keep us constantly moving our attention out and trying to not have to see some of the things that are lurking in our psyche on a deeper level. So all the things like desire, lust, greed, anger, irritation, aversion, anxiety, confusion, fear, those kinds of emotions that are in abeyance but still present in kind of the form of a potential, start to bubble up in the bump and grind of being in community, rubbing up against each other in different ways. So just to be aware of these and to start to use the container of the monastery, and particularly of the precepts, to get a sense of the strength of these emotions. And they're different for everybody. Some people are greed types, some people are anger types, some people are delusion or fear anxiety types, some people are two of the three, some people are all three of the three. Maybe most of us experience all of them at some point or another. So, but just to start to get to know those tendencies underneath and how to start working with them in a way that's fruitful in the long run, not just looking for some sort of temporary relief, which is basically the way most of us are conditioned to do it. You know, some desire arises in the sensual sphere and we do what we can to get it. Or a moment of anger arises and we express it in some way. Or fear and anxiety arises and we start to proliferate on it. And all of these are old habits that we think are going to offer us some sort of relief, because even things that are desirable, that we're attracted to, that sense of wanting is actually uncomfortable, and we're looking to get rid of that sense of wanting by getting. Anger is a very uncomfortable emotion. It's very fiery. There's a lot of heat that arises in the body, and the mind starts to proliferate, and we look for ways to get rid of that unpleasant feeling. Fear, anxiety is the same. It's a very uncomfortable feeling in the body, and we want to do anything we can to get rid of that feeling. And so we start thinking and proliferating because we think that we can somehow solve it on a conceptual level. But any of these kinds of activities, when we act in body, by actions of body or by speech, any of these methods of relieving that unpleasant feeling usually don't do anything except either transfer it to somebody else or really cause it to exacerbate in one's own mind. So we learn how to not act on it. That's part of the restraint of being in a monastery, and it goes counter to a lot of tendencies in the modern world that we should express our feelings, all the time. We should act, express our anger. Particularly, anger is a good one to focus on because it's a very potent energy, and it's very obvious. And by acting on anger, either in body or speech, we can cause harm. It's harm to ourselves, harm to others, and it usually just keeps on proliferating. It just keeps on multiplying when we act on it in body or speech particularly. So, say, taking that as an example, something hits us the wrong way, or somebody does something that irritates us, or there's some sort of sense of righteous indignation arising because of some wrong in the world, or some political entity of your political choice does something that's aggravating. We focus on that and we get upset, we say things, and that often doesn't usually help the matter. It might temporarily feel good to express that or to say something, or if somebody's wronged you, say in the community, you've had a difficult interaction, it's really, you want to blast them, you want to lay it out and tell them why they're wrong and how they should be doing it. That rarely works, except to give a temporary moment of release from that energy that is bubbling up inside, causing the heat. So we have the restraints on speech, and of course the restraints on bodily action. We wouldn't ever allow anybody to strike anybody here or threaten anybody here physically. So to just be aware of those energies and that urge to get rid of the feeling, and to say no, no to that. And this is where we have to be really restrained. This is where we have the restraint of the Patimokkha, the training rules, to say, no, I'm not going to act on that. I'm not going to say this. I'm going to, kind of, while the anger is still there, I'm going to just be quiet. I'm not going to dump on somebody. I'm not going to find somebody else out to listen to my anger, but to see if I can just contain it in terms of speech, in terms of bodily action, and see and be willing to honestly witness the unpleasantness of that and to bear with that and to watch it as it arises and passes away before finding somebody to talk to, before trying to release that energy. So it's when something like that, just as an example, when something like that arises, I find a really useful motto is to drop the story and feel the feeling. So you're not repressing the emotion and pretending it's not there, but you're not acting on it either. You're willing to feel the painfulness of it and see if you can bear that until it passes away. And then just to be witness to the unpleasant feeling and how the urge is to get rid of it immediately, but how rarely that works in the long run. So whether it's greed or lust or anger or anxiety, confusion, all of that I think can be really ameliorated in a skillful long-term way by dropping the story in your mind and feel the feeling, being willing to go there, and then just see what arises and passes away and what you can learn from that. And then at some appropriate time, particularly say if it's a disagreement, then when the heat is down, maybe it's time to approach somebody and to have a quiet discussion. But just to watch these emotions and realize that they're natural, they're part of our conditioning, it's not a judgment on who we are, but that we can be skillful in how we respond to it in a way that brings comfort in the long term rather than just short-term release of that energy. So I'll leave that for this morning's reflection.